to it. The place to start, I think, is the ACC Challenge that is, believe it or not, already wrapped up, even though it is a 2-day event, because the SEC went out and won the first 9 games of the 16-game challenge. If not for Clemson upsetting Kentucky, the SEC would be up 10-0. As it is, SEC is up 9-1. Let me run you through the results, then we'll get Norlander to tell us what in the world's going on here. We had South Carolina over Boston College by 22 points. Then Missouri over Cal in a game between two places that previously employed Conzo Martin. Georgia over Notre Dame. That's a possible college football playoff preview. Arkansas beat Miami, dropped the Hurricanes to 3-5 on the season. Ole Miss over Louisville inside the Yum Center, 23-point victory. Respect the SIP. Texas A&M over Wake Forest in a battle of former Billy Gillespie assistants. Oklahoma over Georgia Tech by 15. Tennessee over Syracuse by 26. LSU over Florida State by 10. Those were the first 9 games of this event. Again, the SEC won them all, turning what's supposed to be a challenge into, I don't know, little more than a mild inconvenience. It's the SEC ACC mild inconvenience. Norlander, what'd you make of what the SEC did to the ACC last night?
It's a mild inconvenience for the SEC, but for the ACC, I mean, this is this is a catastrophe. It's the SEC ACC cataclysm. This is yikes, man. But I can't wait for the ACC to not be deterred and eventually send 3 teams to the Elite Eight and probably 2 to the Final Four, despite all this stuff. So top to bottom, the ACC's got some issues. You want to focus on the ACC or do you want to focus on the SEC first? You pick it.
I focus on everything at all times. I'm always completely focused on all things. Well, like for the SEC, it's just, and I obviously led the top 25 and won with that this morning. There's been a lot of indicators, as you and I have talked about all season, even during the preseason, that the SEC would be the best men's basketball conference in the country. This didn't start yesterday, but buddy, they hammered home the point yesterday. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people, like just casual fans in the middle of football season, are sitting around and looking at, top 50 KenPom teams and top 25 Bart Torvik teams and top 10 Evan Mia teams like you and I do every single day. But when you, on a combination of ESPN, ESPN2, and ACC Network, whatever else they're putting it on, when it's clearly the biggest thing happening in college basketball tonight is a bunch of games under this umbrella, and then it goes 9-0 to start, that's impossible not to recognize if you're following the sport at all.
Hitting it on the screen with every single result. Yeah. So it went 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. Every 20 minutes it seemed it was.
Yeah, I see people sending old Mike Krzyzewski quotes to Old Takes Exposed, talking about, I think Coach K maybe 10 years ago had quoted somewhere about saying something along the lines of the new ACC will be the best basketball conference in the history of the sport. And maybe it will be someday.
Let's go.
But it's not. It's clearly not right now. Here's one way to illustrate that point. To get back to the nerd stuff. The SEC now has 13 top 50 KenPom teams, including number 1 Auburn and number 2 Tennessee. So 13 of the top 50 and the top 2 come from the SEC. Here's the other thing that's wild. There's nobody lower than 73. Vanderbilt is the lowest rated KenPom team in the SEC at 73. Now, wait till you hear these numbers. I just told you that.
Andy is 7-1, by the way. Go ahead.
Right? Yeah, and they're 7-1. I think the lone loss is what? Drake? Is that they're 7-1.
Yeah, no shame that the lone loss is against Drake.
Right. Okay, so SEC 13 top 50 KenPom teams, nobody lower than 73. Right now, the ACC. I just trivia time you. How many top 50 KenPom teams? ACC.
That's a good question. I have a thing on the Big East in today's court report, and I do know because I was like, the Big East is kind of slumping. I had written it in large part before last night, and I was like, I can't switch this up for the ACC right now. But I do know this: the Big East has 1 top 30 KenPom team, and the ACC has 4 in the top 30. So I'll say 4 overall.
It's 4 in the top 50. ACC has 4 top 50 KenPom teams, and you ready for this? 10 schools outside of the top 73. In other words, according to KenPom right now, for whatever that's worth, there are 10 ACC schools that rate lower than the lowest rated SEC school, which is Vanderbilt. More than half of the league is worse than the worst SEC school, according to KenPom. Comment on that.
Yeah, that's a yikesy right there. ACC is 5th overall in league strength, and it's a comfortable 5th. The Big East actually picked up a couple of decent wins on Tuesday. We'll get to that before we're out of the show. But SEC is comfortably 1st in conference rating. Right now, it's plus 19.54 in adjusted efficiency margin. The SEC is. Number 2 is Big Ten, not the Big 12. Big Ten is number 2 at plus 16.74. So it's almost 3 full percentage points or efficiency points ahead the SEC is from the Big Ten. Big Ten and the Big 12 are really neck and neck at 2 and 3. Then you take a step down. The Big East is on its own tier at 4, and then you take another step down. The ACC is on its own tier at number 5, and then you would even drop even further before you get to the Mountain West, which is 6. So the ACC is comfortably the 5th best league, which is another way of saying it is comfortably and easily the 5th strongest and last of the high major leagues so far this season. Not a great night, obviously. On Tuesday, Clemson actually salvaging it and getting a win, and Brad Brownell having another tournament-looking team. Certainly notable. Kentucky gave it a good go. Kentucky's first road test of the season under Mark Pope. You know, I understand why UK moved into the top 5 in the AP rankings. I don't begrudge that whatsoever. Didn't feel as though Kentucky was a top 5 level team, or at least is not just yet. It doesn't get, it had like 3 open looks at 3-pointers in the final minute. Really need one of those to fall to try and maybe steal it away. It didn't. Clemson fans flooded the floor. They turned off the lights as they were rushing the court. Thankfully, that didn't lead to anything too ridiculous, other than I wouldn't recommend doing that. But Little John decided to go a little crazy there with the lights going off. But the Clemson basically didn't even save the ACC's bacon. There was no bacon to be saved. It was the only team that was able to get a win over an SEC opponent on Tuesday night, and good on the Tigers for doing so, and doing so on their home floor. For the ACC overall, it's going to be a top-heavy league. Right now, it looks like Duke. Congrats to Pitt, oh, by the way, which has a game tonight. It's got a tough road test at Mississippi State, so we'll see if Pitt can get it done. But Pitt is 7-1, and the net rankings debuted Monday. Pitt was 5th. I think it still might be 5th as we're sitting here on Wednesday AM. So good on them. So Duke, Pitt, Clemson, North Carolina probably, although I will note UNC is 4-3 and it plays Bama tonight. We'll preview all the tonight's games on the back half of the show here. But after that, I'm just going to run you down the teams and the records and what we're looking at here right now with the ACC. You know, Louisville is 5-3. It got steamrolled by Ole Miss on Tuesday on its home floor. Now, the Cardinals are also effectively an 8-man rotation now with scholarship players, period. And they have had 2 players lost for the season in just the past couple of days here. Keyshawn Pryor tore his ACL. He's done. And then Corin Johnson has a shoulder issue, and he announced on Tuesday that he is going to redshirt the year. So Cards still have some good players, but I don't think that's looking like a tournament team, and I didn't think it was heading into the season. So they're 5-3 already. SMU and Florida State, couple of 7-2 teams. We'll see. Don't know. NC State has 2 losses already. Notre Dame 4-5 to this point. Miami 3-5. Blew it against Arkansas. That was a tough watch. But nevertheless, I did watch that game. But Miami couldn't win on Tuesday night. Could that be another lost season for the Hurricanes there? Wake Forest, a team that I was way high on and to this point have been wrong about. Wake Forest is 101 at KenPom. It's 7-3, has its losses at Xavier, against Florida on a neutral, and then just at Texas A&M. It does have a good win over Michigan, but it's going to have to turn it around in league play, and this is going to be a problem for Wake Forest. I'm not going to go too deep on this now, but Wake, I thought, would easily cruise into the NCAA tournament this season. It has one good and will only have one good non-conference conquest there, because the only other one from a power conference perspective, GP, is Wake beating Minnesota. The team's not going to qualify for at-large status or anything close to it. Syracuse has J.J. Starling injured. It was non-competitive at Tennessee on Tuesday night. Georgia Tech already has 4 losses. Virginia Tech won't be good. Boston College won't be good. Cal already has 2 losses. You go up and down. Like Stanford is 7-2, but they haven't really played or beaten anyone of note here. It's you look at the ACC, and right now, at least this morning, it's hard to envision, although it very well could happen. I'm not saying it won't happen, okay? But it's hard to envision this league comfortably getting beyond 5 at-large bids. Now, it may do it, but what's wild about that is we lost an entire power conference in the Pac-12. Broadly speaking, these 18-team and 16-team leagues should be able to be putting in, 6 without batting an eye, and the ACC truly appears to be struggling on that. It is easily the worst of the high majors, and frankly, it is hard to see that reversing course here. We're about, call it 55-60% of the way done with non-conference competition in the sport so far this season. The ACC will not win enough games to make up enough ground, so it is fated to be number 5 and at the bottom of the pecking order among all high majors this season.
Another way to illustrate it's the worst of the high majors, and I know different schools schedule different ways, but this isn't, these numbers I'm about to give you, they're not a byproduct of one league schedules one way and another league schedules another. It's a byproduct of like some leagues are good and some leagues aren't as good. After last night, the ACC as a league, now they got 18 teams, all that stuff, right? But they have 49 losses. 49 losses as a league. No other power conference has more than 29 losses as a league.
Man.
I know. The ACC has 49 losses as a league. No other power conference has more than 29. The SEC only has 17. So it's just, they're losing a lot more than the other power conferences. That's the simplest way to say it. And I know we reach the point every year where the ACC coaches are going on the ACC network and hating on every computer and bracketologist.
Fired up already. Come on.
Yeah. So
it's a little tough right now for the ACC. Jim Phillips is on his PR tour after Miami dropped 6 spots in the college football playoff rankings, and now that league is at risk of only sending one team to the CFP, depending on how that championship game goes. So it's actually it's kind of tough times for the moment at the ACC. I understand the trials and tribulations.
And the other thing was, it wasn't just 9-1; it was like 9-1 with a bunch of blowouts. It's just like Ole Miss just goes into Louisville and destroys them, and like Tennessee's clearly really good / great. Syracuse not. Syracuse's best player, it cast on his hand. He's in street clothes. I guess I didn't expect the game to be competitive, but you still just don't. As somebody who grew up watching Syracuse be one of the most consistent winners in the sport, biggest brands, the idea that you just watch them on a random Tuesday night lose by 26 to anybody is not something you expect to do. And here's another trivia time for you. When was the last time Syracuse finished in the top 4 in the ACC?
I'm going to say this is completely, I'm going to say 2013.
2014. They've never won Syracuse has been in the ACC for 10 years. Never won it. Never finished top 3. Only finished top 4 once. Like that's,
it's a school. It's never changing, but it's a school in the wrong league. It should be in the Big East, whatever. I've been singing the song since they switched, but whatever.
It is. It is undeniable that UConn's program went to a different place when it left the Big East, and then went back to that place when it went back to the Big East. And I'm not even suggesting that Syracuse should do something like that, because football matters more than anything else. It was actually controversial. I don't know if it's controversial because the UConn fans wanted it, but it wasn't entirely clear to the rest of the world that UConn was doing something smart when it, pulled out of the AAC and put its basketball programs back into the Big East. And so I'm not even suggesting that Syracuse should do something like that, but I don't think there's a real argument to be made against. The program has dropped off, perhaps for multiple reasons, but league affiliation does seem to be one of them.
Yeah, tough moment for the ACC here. Obviously, they've got some schools with some good opportunities tonight. We'll get to that before we wrap the show here. For the SEC, your undefeated teams, there are only like 12 or 13 or 14 undefeated teams left in the entire sport. Auburn, as of this taping, still hasn't taken a loss. Tennessee is 8-0. Florida is 8-0. Oklahoma won on Tuesday night over Georgia Tech. It is now 8-0, picked 15th in that league in the preseason, and the teams with only one loss in the SEC: Kentucky 7-1, Mississippi 7-1, Mississippi State 6-1, Texas 6-1, Georgia a little bit sneaky there. They might have a tournament team there. Georgia is 8-1, LSU is 7-1, Missouri which unleashed a can on Cal in the second half, is 7-1. Not even, it was rated in the bottom 3 in the SEC overall, but it's 7-1. And then Vandy is 7-1. So a great start for the SEC, and barring some, December performances on the whole that we're not anticipating, this should wind up being the best league in the country. And that means that it will probably, got to get there, but it will probably send at least 10 teams to the big dance.